Good evening, everyone. It is October 25th, 2022, and it is now 6:05 p.m. So I call this meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. Pursuant to Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting of the Urban Design Commission is conducted via remote participation. We will make recordings available on request as soon as possible after the meeting. My name is Sarah Lewis. I am co-chair of the Urban Design Commission. With me this evening is also Courtney Kirk, who is my fellow co-chair for the evening. We'll start with a roll call of the commission members present. Andrew Abba.
Here.
Deborah Fennick.
Here.
Sherry Ruan.
Here.
Tim Hood. Tim? Can't hear you. I'm going to record him as present since we all see him, even though we can't hear him right now. Frank Valdez. Not yet. And Tim Talon has let us know that he will be arriving later this evening. So we do have quorum and are going to proceed. Tim, do you want to try an audio test again? Sorry, as far as audio tests, I wonder if everybody can hear the sirens going behind me. Sorry about that. All right, I think we should move on while Tim fixes his technical difficulties. So as is the chair's prerogative, I am going to rearrange the order of procedure this evening because we do have a few recusals that need to be happening. So I would like our first order of business to be 32 through 44 White Street. We will then take 8 Medford Street, followed by 120 Middlesex. I would like to slide the other business forward on the agenda so that we can discuss. We have a request from the commission to talk about the 2023 schedule as part of other business. So I think before we go into any of the projects, let's take that first. So Sherry, I think that was your item that we wanted to discuss.
So Tuesday nights are a challenge for me in the winter. I have a weekly hockey game that I am the goalie for, and it's problematic when I don't show up. Excuse me. So one question I had was, if we're meeting monthly, I could just find a sub once a month, right? And play 3 times a month and get a sub once a month. But I think Andrew said we were doing every other week. Because we only have 1 a month for the rest of the year, right?
I think we're supposed to be the twice a month essentially. The second and first, or second and fourth, but
second and fourth Tuesday of the month are the standing meeting days. It's what ends up happening at the end of the year is we get difficulties with obviously holidays and things like that.
Okay, so I think when I first had joined, I had lobbed the question if there was another night that was possible, but being the new kid, I didn't want to be too pushy. So now that I'm almost a full year in, now I'm going to be a little pushier, and I don't know if there's another night during the week that is possible.
So generally, the short answer is it's going to be a huge lift to make that change. So so right now, what happens is when we meet in person, we have currently reserved the chambers for Tuesday evenings because Legislative Matters is the only council meeting that is currently scheduled on Tuesday nights, and they will meet in the committee room. We don't know as of yet what the open meeting law will be, if it's changed at all. Next year, we won't know that until next March. So we have to issue the calendar for next year very shortly, assuming that it is going to be at least hybrid, if not totally in person. For everything I've learned about what the legislature is pushing towards, they're going to permanently adopt the hybrid, but we don't know that for certain. So we have the, like I said, we have chambers reserved on the second and fourth Tuesdays for when that happens in person. So it is a difficult thing based on what's going on with meeting space
Okay.
to rearrange.
So I feel like maybe the other option is I miss one of these a month, every other meeting, but I coordinate with you guys to make sure there's a quorum or something like that. And then I miss one hockey game a month to be here.
I will say that we should keep in mind that we do have an alternate. So in your absence, Tim can vote on behalf of to make sure that we have quorum. So
Great.
that's why we have alternates. So we do have some flexibility, and I think, however, the once a month, sort of, I think we can talk about what your comfort level is with participating.
Okay. So how best to do that? Do we have to have these conversations in the open meetings? As much as I'd like to share my sports schedule with all 32 members of this meeting.
No, I think that's something that Andrew and I can work with you on what that looks like behind the scenes, and then we can just inform the commission and the public when we get something resolved, and then also to make sure that Tim knows sort of which meetings can be, he needs to assume that he has to vote on and prepare accordingly.
All right, thank you.
Of course. I will say I'm hoping to have early November, have that calendar worked out. It always ends up being a little bit trickier than we expect it to, with sort of multiple holidays and adjustments for that. But sort of obviously we've got 3 other boards and commissions that we have to get the calendar done for as well. So it's priority.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So without further ado, 32 through 44 White Street. Andrew G., can you make sure that we've got the right people unmuted to present?
Yes, if you're presenting or speaking for this project, please use the raise hand feature and I will promote you.
Good evening, can you hear me? I apologize, the fire alarm in my building just started going off, but since they've had the doors to the fire alarm system open all day, I assume they're just working on it. At least that's the assumption I'm going with. If I log off suddenly, then you'll know. It's Attorney Adam Dash, 48 Grove Street in Somerville, representing SGL Development, Inc. With us is Adam Siegel from SGL and Peter Quinn of Peter Quinn Architects. Just real quick, because I know we want to keep this moving. We're here to present the plans for the redevelopment of these properties. Just to let you know, the Historic Preservation Commission has already heard the demolition of the existing houses in May and has not found them to be significant or worth of demolition delay. So we're moving forward. In their place, we're looking to do a lab building. Peter, you want to take it away?
Sure, thank you. Yes, hi, everybody. Peter Quinn Architects in Davis Square. I just want to make sure that Mark Nielsen and Katya Posadillo are both unmuted. Andrew, you could? Thank you. I'm going to show my screen now. So I said share my screen, but does everybody see the photograph?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the current view of the site. Just to give you an orientation if you don't know it already. Let's see. And in plan, which I'll go to now. This is the context that it sits in. So of course, across the street is the large parking lot for the Porter Square Mall. And there are a number of older buildings that are, many of which are converted to commercial uses. The Somerville municipal line runs with Cambridge right along. You can see this blue line here. So most of the street in front of the building, all the street in front of the building is in Cambridge. And the sidewalk is in Somerville. And then we have this small White Street Place that is a dead end, leading to some multifamily units in the back there. We are proposing a technology and lab type building on this site. And so we're embracing the allowances, the uses that are given in MR4 for a location like this. It is not a pedestrian street. And the way we've arranged this site is to, I'm just going to briefly take you through the site plan, and then Mark Nielsen will take you through the facade changes, facade proposal. We of course have got to widen the sidewalk to that consistent 12 feet width. So we've done that by adding about a little more than 7 feet of setback from the sidewalk, which is just around 5 feet. We've also introduced a similar kind of setback on the Park Street Place, a full 12 feet. However, we do have a canopy that we've introduced, which you'll see in the facade, to provide some rain protection for pedestrians, and also as a design element on our facade. So the building itself has basically got a public corner where we have a reception lobby, and each floor has its own kind of similar layout, and then potential technology and lab area as an attachment to that corner element. Now, one of the requirements in MR4 is the length of the building cannot be more than 100 feet of continuous facade. So we have actually introduced a step here, which you'll see in the way we treated the facade as well, and that this side is consistently sort of more solid, and then this is more glazed. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Mark Nielsen. I hope you can bring it up, and we'll start with our facade choices that we brought forward here. Mark, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Peter. This is a scheme that we generated for our first neighborhood meetings, and then we've added 2 alternate schemes. I think the team it feels that the second scheme turned out better than the one that we presented the first time. But you can see on this facade, there's a break that Peter was just talking about, which corresponds functionally to the program of the building, the space program inside the building. The punched window openings are the lab portion of the building, and the curtain wall on the upper floors is the office and support areas for desk type work. We've run the fenestration percentages on the, and that's that diagram up on the top corner. So we believe that our facades are compliant with the fenestration requirements. In all of the schemes, the office area of the building has a higher parapet level, which is further distinction between the two portions of the building. The ground floor has entry doors in it every 24 feet, and it's thought that if that these are a good location for incubator lab activity, and that the offices for those kinds of lab activities would be arranged along the streetscape, because office space would be probably better than lab space on the sidewalk. We have a material sheet that we've added to the presentation in addition to the material that you've seen that elaborates, shows the materials, the building palette that we've opted to go with. And there are notes on the bottom of that. I don't know if you can see that or not, where we have show where those materials show up on the building. We've elected to stay away from the red brick and to pursue sort of a gray and darker brick palette. And I think that would probably, in addition, well, I should mention that we've added, if you go to the second scheme, Peter.
You want to mention this is the Webb Street Place?
Yeah, that's just the Webb Street Place facade, so it sort of carries on in the continues around the corner. Get to the second scheme.
I would just note that we're limited to 15 minutes in the presentation, Mark, so if you want to get to all three of them, so we can.
Yeah, I'm gonna go quickly. Peter sent me a reminder here. So we've added a aluminum shadow box around the punched window openings and modified the punched window opening spacing on the second scheme. And with the intention that it looks something like that third picture. You can just jump down to the third scheme.
I'll show the Webb Street Place as well.
Yeah. And both first and second, or in the second two schemes we're showing you, we've dropped the canopy a little closer to the sidewalk, so it's a little more personal scale along the building edge. In this scheme, we have eliminated the curtain wall on the office area and have sort of followed a sort of larger brick punched window opening strategy for that office area of the building. And I think, for the sake of time, I can leave it there and then we can answer questions.
We do have a number of 3D models that we created for the first scheme to give you a sense of mapping in the context of the neighborhood.
Can I ask a quick question just for clarification? What building type is this?
This would be a commercial building, I believe.
Commercial building. Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Yeah. I just hesitated because those are, even after 3 years, not on the tip of my fingers all the time, so I apologize. Let's see. Yeah, so commercial building. And this view right here, of course, you're looking back toward the T-stop and CVS and the corner building. Another one across from the parking lot with a little higher elevation than eye level. But again, this was the original intention with this glass corner, creating a very nice public presentation. Of course, these would have blinds in them at times, and would be able to close down at night so they're not sending light out onto the street. Above all this, we do have a screened area for mechanical equipment, which, as you can imagine, is somewhat complicated. This will be, something we'll adjust. We are requesting the special permit that allows the extra height for this. Another view across the parking lot. a view up White Street, which I think works well. You can see the public space and entry under, under the canopy. We'll also get into a short landscape presentation with Verdant presenting in a few minutes here. Those are the primary massing models that we wanted to show you as well. So with that, if you could make Katya Posadio the presenter, or at least her voice, and I will go through the landscape plans with her. Katya, there?
Yeah, just a reminder, you got about 10 minutes left to present, Peter. Thank you.
Okay. So you're not hearing Katya
on her end.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Hi, Peter, thank you. My name is Katya Posadlo. I am principal at Verdant Landscape Architecture. So this is our landscape plan. I wanted to speak to the three main components: streetscape design along the White Street and White Street Place. And then I wanted to speak to the buffered areas along the rear and the sides of the building. And then finally, the vegetated green roof that we have designed. So first, taking a look at the streetscapes. Right now, there are no sidewalks along White Street Place, which is along the right-hand side there. And then the sidewalk along White Street, which is just barely within Somerville, is only 4 feet wide. So there's really very much, lacking in the way of pedestrian circulation. There's also 2 curb cuts located along White Street. One is 13.5 feet wide, one is 20 feet wide along White Street there. And as you can see, our plans include quite a bit of good pedestrian improvements to the sidewalk areas. We're going to be closing those 2 curb cuts along White Street, making a much safer pedestrian experience, so you don't have to cross driveway areas. And then we're widening the streetscapes to be 12 feet wide, as Peter mentioned, along both frontages. This is going to include a minimum of a 6 foot wide, fully accessible concrete paved sidewalk. On White Street Place, actually, it's 9 feet wide. And then along White Street here that you see, Peter zoomed in, we have a 6 foot wide furnishing zone for new street trees, bike racks, a bench, permeable unit paving. And then along White Street Place, there's actually no curbing even, so we're going to be providing curbing, formalizing that street edge. You can also see on the right, we're introducing a bioswale to receive stormwater from White Street Place and help infiltrate it and provide a little pre-treatment. So there's some curb openings, if you can. It's hard to see in this plan, of course. There's a lot of detail that we thought through, but hard to represent in one quick plan. So all in all, these changes in the sidewalk areas represent really good improvement to the public realm, and a great deal of that is within our property lines. Another component of the landscape I mentioned is the rear and the side yard buffers. So towards the top of the page there, you can see there's some significant shade trees in the abutter's yard up there. That's actually southward. So this limits what we could plant along that edge. Plus it's kind of fairly narrow between the building and our property line. But we do widen out in the corner to the sort of our upper left-hand corner of our property, where there's sort of an L-shaped zone. So we're able to plant some trees and some shrubs in that area as a buffer between our building and the property next door, which is actually a public parking lot. So we're also adding a fence in an L shape there for privacy and buffering. And then further on to the left, just a note, there's a single-story masonry commercial building, and they want access around to their backyard, and they don't have any property to do that on, so we're providing a gravel walkway to get back there on our property and not fencing it off. There's no need for a fence there. So if you zoom back out and we go to the last page in my plan, just want to quickly touch on, so not the next one, but that one. Is there not another one with a green roof? There it is. So above the 4th floor, so this is the 5th floor, surrounding the mechanicals, the penthouse mechanical spaces, we've developed a vegetated green roof. The plan currently includes a minimum 6-inch depth green roof tray system. And as you can see, it kind of wraps around, helping mitigate urban heat island effects and slowing a little bit of stormwater and adding to the aesthetics of the building, of course. And lastly, just to note, we have calculated the green score, and based on the design that we're showing here, we do meet the minimum required for the MR4 district of 0.25. So I think that's all I wanted to
I just
share.
want to mention that. I just want to mention that this is not a 5th story. It's just the roof. It's mechanical equipment.
Yeah, the roof of the 4th story, so it'd be the 5th roof deck thing. Yeah. Thanks.
So I'm afraid we might have rushed a little bit going through the facades. I'm wondering if it would be worthwhile to just spend whatever time we have left just sort of trying to get them in order in your mind, members of the commission. Is that something that would be useful?
You have about 5 minutes left to present, if that's helpful.
Yeah, okay. So Mark, let's just go through the materials and the facade concepts for 1, 2, and 3. You just tell me which one to go with. I want to make sure we present both facades. Both
Yeah.
sides.
So the first option that we have is the one that we came to the neighbors with in our initial meetings, and is carried here as the first scheme. And it's using a curtain wall in contrast to punched open windows. There are 3 colors of brick. There's the body of the brick color of the main lab area, and then there is some black accent banding on the upper level to distinguish the top level from the 2nd and 3rd floors. And then the brick that's associated underneath the curtain wall is yet a 3rd color. So there are 3 colors of brick in this scheme. We can go to the next shot. And in this scheme, we did not have any shadow boxes on the windows, but we were providing, we were calling for a projecting fin off of the horizontal mullion elements in these punched window openings for some shadow. This is kind of turning the corner.
This is our preferred scheme, facade 2. Talk about that one.
Yeah. So this is the the actual curtain wall hasn't been selected, but it's going to be similar to this innovation window system, which allows for some projecting fins on the mullion system, and that would give us more play in terms of emphasizing elements on that curtain wall, making it interesting. And we have the punched windows are now reinforced with the shadow boxes.
And what Mark's referring to is this kind of effect, maybe not that deep, but similar.
Yeah, it wouldn't be that deep, but 4 inches. We're thinking 4 inches. And then on this one, we've rendered the canopy lower on the building than the first scheme. We dropped the canopy down, and we've changed the support mechanism for the canopy to the cable structure of the building, or steel rod.
Yeah. And we carry that around. So.
Yeah, we carry it around in the lobby area, correct. The 2 doors on the left are the garage door into the parking and the service bay.
Right. Yeah. On the right.
Right. Okay.
And our 3rd scheme.
The 3rd scheme maintains the left side similar to the 2nd scheme, but changes the right side to a punched window openings scheme. And this means there's a fair amount more of the brown colored brick on the building as well. Turning the corner, we're basically taking the same strategy of wrapping the corner and then terminating the brown brick at the same point as the previous scheme. We also introduced a 4-inch a reveal between the two brick colors to allow that break to happen and to give us a shadow line there. It shows up more clearly on the second scheme.
Okay,
Time is about up.
yeah, and that is our presentation to get started.
So I have a question. I think you may have answered it, but I'll ask it anyway. What is the program for the ground floor?
So the ground floor is also technology space. It could be developed differently. We obviously are introducing storefronts in here, consistent with bylaw. But I think actually the owner would be best to answer that question, but what his plans are for that. I think he's on here, Adam Siegel. If he could come on for a sec, that would be great. In any case, we have set it up to be used consistent with some of the spaces up above. But it also could be used, for local uses as well, depending on how the market fares.
Is the intent that it activates the sidewalk that people can see?
Yeah, I mean,
Or is it going to be closed off?
Yeah, so here's the plan. So it doesn't show you much, but it could be done in such a way that some of these spaces are reserved for street activity type uses, but it just remains to be seen on how the building, it is set up to do that, but I can't speak for the owner in terms of what he actually intends to try to get here on day one. Very expensive building to build. So.
Yeah, and I asked the question because there is a lot of little stuff happening on that street, and it connects. Yeah, I mean, there is some commercial and other things that happen on that street, and it would be a shame if it was, that was discontinuous. So I have a few questions. If you could go to what you're saying is the preferred, design.
There. Yeah.
And can you point out, maybe blow it up a little bit? I'm trying to follow on my own screen. But what is, which brick, strategy, because I noticed some had dark mortar and some had light mortar and things like that. You can go into the materials on this one, that would be helpful. And to explain why you think this is better than option one.
Okay. Mark, do you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah, can you blow up the that material board and focus in on the brick? So there are 3 colors of brick cover all of the schemes. The first scheme that we presented to the neighbors uses all of those bricks. Then the darker middle brick is the accent banding that I spoke of on the upper level. In the following 2 alternatives that we generated, we eliminated that brick banding at the top. So that drops out, and we have the 2 bricks on either end of this board. And the first brick is for the mass of the building that's close to 100 feet long, and the brown brick is for the area of the office and personnel area.
You can see them right here.
Yeah, it shows up a little bit there. It's not, there's a lot more curtain wall than brick on that part of the building until we get to the third scheme. I think that on the difference between our preferred scheme, which is the second alternative, and the one we presented to the neighborhood, is that the punched openings on the 100-foot section of the building are quite a different proportion, and we felt that that was a better proportion for the building. And we also added the shadow box to further give that facade some shadow and animate the facade.
What kind of glass is going to be there? Because right now, it looks sort of, I don't know if it'll be reflecting the sky or if it will, you won't, well, at night, you'll probably see into the space. But during the day, what's the quality of it? Right now, it's sort of like blank. Just, the number one had some, although the proportions I think are better here, it did have mullions that, sort of started to fill in.
Yeah. So this scheme, the Windows mullion system is more randomized, and it's breaking down with the use of those fins. It sort of breaks down the scale of that facade into a much finer composition of parts. But the second scheme, sort of normalizes that composition into a more traditional bay, although we do maintain a variation in the widths of the vertical mullions. The glass itself, I don't know if we've really dug into that yet in terms of what kind of glazing. We haven't had the conversation yet, but I would doubt that it's going to be reflective type glass. It may have a coating on it to help with the UV characteristics, but the intention would not be a tinted, goldish tinted effect or something along those lines.
On the White Street elevation, like the two slotted windows, is that just artistic expression of the rendering to be kind of like multicolored, or is that part of the design?
Oh, it's just, yeah, the multicolor is not part of the design. It's more sort of a rendering of the glass. That would have the same kind of glass in it. It is the fire stair. So there'll be a stair behind it that, comes in at different levels. There's a bit of a landing that will show up on the inside of that glazing.
Okay, and then it looks like there's an image of a building just below that. Is that intended for some piece of public art or something?
Yeah, thank you. Well, that was sort of a nod to the Porter Square area, and that's an old historic photograph of the Sears. I think it's what used to be the Sears building on the sort of iconic piece of architecture from the area that we thought would be nice there. So
in any case, we did promise, we did agree with the Historic Commission to, develop some photo schemes for historic markers on this building. So that's to be determined yet. But we've reserved a location.
Can I ask why you chose to not use the darker brick on the upper floor on this scheme? I mean, I don't think it should. Could it start at the sill of the fourth floor and then go up, so you actually have a top to the mass?
So it's similar to what we did, Sarah, to in the first scheme. Yeah,
I wonder what the logic was for eliminating that as a concept.
Yeah. Mark, you want to?
I think that our feeling was that when we added the shadow boxes, which really, break up that plane of the building, that the banding on the building was maybe moot, not quite as important to carry through on the building. I think that's probably better.
Where will the plane of the glass be? So the shadow boxes project forward. The plane of the glass will also be recessed from the actual facade
Right.
plane?
Yeah. So the total depth of that between the glass and the outer edge of the shadow box is probably going to end up being something like 6 or 7 inches.
Yeah. maybe a little more. It'll be a full brick depth into the wall, which is 3.5 inches, plus the shadow box, which is 4, so 7.5 inches.
I didn't say, I mean, I'd take maybe an opportunity to just mention the mechanical screen walls, and that is that you probably noticed that we broke the orientation of the panel system and to follow suit with the building below it. Just a minor thing.
Are those panels supposed to be intended to be solid, or is it going to be like a high level of perforation there?
The intention, I mean, they're going to need to function acoustically, not just visibly. So what we have some choices as to what we make that metal out of. It can be a variety of options, but it's going to be 100% visually opaque because it's going to have acoustical bat in it that will absorb the sound from the equipment on the roof. And then parts of it are actually going to be interior, mechanical. There's a mechanical room up there behind that wall for equipment that needs to be indoors.
And then it looks like the elevations are showing them 16 feet high. So is that reflective of the additional height that you were requesting?
Yeah.
Yes, anything above 10 feet requires a special permit up to 20. We consider everything in the 16 feet.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's our request.
You probably noticed from the shadow studies that the height of this we're fortunate with a site like this in this location and orientation, and that most of the shadows are falling into the street and the parking areas, and so it's unusual to have a project that has this kind of a building mass on it and is basically throwing most of its shadow onto pavement.
Yeah.
You can see that there.
Well, just in terms of the building massing, I think the way you've broken it up makes sense. I think the first option with a little bit more articulation on in the glass, I think that's a perfectly good option as well. It is a lot busier than your preferred scheme, so I can kind of understand why option 2 might be your preference. So I'm open to either option. I did have a question about the ground floor and the loading area. It looks like White Street is a pretty narrow street, and just graphically, it looks like on your floor plan we're showing a truck. I was just wondering about maneuvering a truck, where your curb cut is in relation to. I don't know if that street has any street parking, or what. How you envision trucks and cars entering and exiting that space.
Yeah. So I'll show you a diagram in a minute. So we don't expect this building to be serviced by large semis. The typical loading arrangement is 24 or 26-foot box trucks that arrive, with small deliveries, and as well as your typical, FedEx and UPS deliveries. So they would be able to pull into this truck bay very easily. We did actually, let's see if I have it. Okay. So we have this is turned, but we had a traffic engineer set up a 30-foot truck, which is bigger than we would typically use. And they show how they would come down White Street. There's no parking on that side. They would sweep, the truck would sweep in and then back in to that loading dock. Automobiles are no problem entering and exiting and going in there. We also showed, and of course with the special permit application, we'll show this in more detail, that a ladder truck can make the corner as well. It does have to go up onto the sidewalk, but that's normally allowed. It's not hitting anything and doing that. So,
And
yep.
Oh, sorry. If you want to continue, I can ask my question.
No, that's it. That's it. We got to a place where
okay.
we're pretty secure about it. Yeah.
And so the program of the building. Can you talk again about the frequency of the expected truck visits?
Well, they could be daily, but not regular.
Yeah.
Bringing glassware, small reagents and canisters and that kind of thing. So it all goes through a secure system. We do have a trash and recycling room, which will develop as we understand the program better. But that does allow, a trash truck to take away the normal trash and recycling, and of course there'll be some things that have to be picked up, by a certified carrier, and that'll also, be something that can be done through the truck though. And we do have an underground garage. Which I know the interior plans are not really to be presented in detail, but we do have an underground garage which has parking for I think it's 25 cars, and it does use we're proposing to use a lift system for which we don't need a special permit.
Yeah, I would note that the tenants have not been identified for the building yet,
Yeah.
so it's kind of hard to get into the details of the programming.
Exactly. But we try to keep all the, the kind of utility aspects of the building back to the rear here, and then really get the public space with the lobby and conference rooms and the like, toward the front. And I think that works pretty well.
Okay, I appreciate the effort to improve the public way, specifically with the trees and widening of the access way, and providing a recess entry and at the bike the bike area.
Oh yeah, we hardly mentioned that. I'm sorry about that.
I wanted to ask again. I think you already talked about the program at the first floor. I was just looking at where the door is located. I was just I would say the concern there was if the door would want to swing outwards, it might pinch that area between the front of the building and the tree. So that seemed to be like a pinch point if that's where the door was intended.
There's actually quite a bit of space there, but I hear you on that. Let's see. So we're not consistent between the facades because of different choices on the doors and where we show this one door. So yeah, I think you're saying right here, this could create a pinch point. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think actually the facade renderings that I just showed you have a door here and another one further down here. So there may be some way to avoid that, a little better.
Yeah, I was just
swing out.
Yeah, I was just trying to anticipate if occupancy require them to swing out, if that was the best spot for them.
Yeah, they're not actually egress doors, but if the occupancy is higher than a certain amount, we have to swing out.
Okay, and then one final question: the architecture of the building, as you come down White Street Place towards, is that Elm Street on the main facade?
See if I can get that for you.
White Street, you mean?
As you come from White Street Place and walk towards White Street, I was wondering what the quality of the building would look like from that street. it would be a similar type of architecture to White Street Place, or would that be a little bit more more of a blank wall, like what's on the side or the
Yeah, yeah. Well, as you can imagine, with labs, blank walls are important. But let's see if I can bring those elevations up. We do go to a more utility type surface in those areas, because we do need, we do need to develop some wall space, and we do have some windows, but they're limited. Just so that's the rear elevation. So effectively, this is diagrammatic. We didn't render it, but if you're walking down White Street Place, here's the widened sidewalk right here where my cursor is. And then we have some windows which are shown as these squares. So there is some articulation of windows in that whole area, but the facade that we would do would be stucco in this area, and with the articulation lines shown everywhere. So we're trying to, put the high value facade materials out at the corner and along White Street Place proper, and then kind of go to a more utility kind of surface in the rear.
Okay, and then
we're at time for discussion. I want to keep going, and I just want to make sure that we have time to talk about the landscape as well. So carry on, Tim.
Yeah.
Sorry about
sorry for all the questions, but the color of the stucco, would you imagine that to try to match the color of the thin brick, or
Yeah.
that would be something else?
Well, I think that it would be best, in the cooler, grayer tones, and it would be work with the brick. Something light would be more reflective of light, and it would be, in my mind anyway, it would be less attractive. So we would put a color in that color, the EFIS system, or we would paint it, whatever the manufacturer recommends for that.
And also right here in this view, there's expected to be quite a grove of trees right in front of us here. So all seasons could be very lovely.
Yeah, I'm just gonna take that as the opportunity to jump in about trees.
Okay.
I mean, I do see some areas of concern between the abutters trees and how they're positioned, right almost on the property line. And just based on their size, this will be a tremendous strain on the neighbors' existing trees in such a way that I don't, the building wall and digging the foundation that you're proposing right now will very much impact the health of your neighbors' trees. So I'm raising the issue now, and especially if the abutter cares about those trees, it will definitely be problematic for your design as you've proposed it right now.
Yeah.
I would be glad to speak to that. There's actually no basement, or there's actually not a very large wall for the first 10 feet of that ramp close to the property line. So it's a very small, short wall, and we would try to be careful with its construction to avoid the first few trees. And then actually at the back left corner, there's an existing building, garage structure located within our property, after which, when it's demoed, I don't believe the root systems of these Norway maples, I don't think it's likely they extend under that structure. So its removal wouldn't impact the tree roots, and therefore, a new wall in that location hopefully also wouldn't impact the roots. But we hear you. And then that's also to say that they're Norway maples. So I'm not sure. I'm super sad if any one of them were to fail. I don't know if anyone else feels the same.
It's not your, it's the neighbor's tree. That's,
absolutely.
if you're destroying a neighbor's tree, that's, between you and the neighbor. But the neighbor has the rights to the tree, and if you damage the tree in a significant way that the tree dies, like that, a abutter can raise whatever legal action with you all. Just saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
We'll
It
address.
would avoid disparaging Norway maples in Somerville too. That would be, that will not go far in many public meetings.
Okay.
I
Did
have
we-
some questions to the landscape plan too. I don't know who's.
Should we finish the building first and then do landscape? Do we have time? Because I asked questions, I didn't make any comments really.
Go
So.
for it.
Okay,
Get
so
it,
just, I'll go quickly. I think I would think twice about the programming of that ground floor and to do something that is an enhancement on the street. I'm a little worried about the scale of this facade right here. Those are, I think they're 9-foot tall windows, or it's just in this neighborhood, you know, it's got houses on either side. It's, you know, even the shopping mall there is scale, you know, is really careful about its scale. It feels a bit like a scale buster. And I think the fact those are blank windows worries me. I don't know what kind of glass could, you know, make up for sort of the scale of them. To Sarah's comment, you know, having something happen as we get towards the top, you know, maybe it isn't mullions, maybe it's the what is it, the shadow boxes get deeper or something. I think this needs some additional nuance to it. It may be scaled okay for certain locations. I don't think it's scaled properly here. I do like that you've dropped the canopy. I think that is an improvement with this scheme. And I also, last comment is I really like the green roof. And I hope that the planting there is, you know, has enough height that it's visible, or drooping or whatever you have planned, that it does have some visibility. So those are my comments.
Thank you. And I think we can address those questions well. We'll go back to landscape.
Yeah, well, Sherry and I'll buzz through quickly, so I know we're good in
No
time.
problem. Where would you like me to enlarge?
So I did have a question as well on the bioswale. In the plan, it's shown with, it looks like curbing around, including the backside. In the detail, the curbing is not on the backside. And I guess the question arises because it looks like in the plan it's shown as 2'6", but it's measuring to the back of curb, making the plant space about 2 foot wide. And I'm trying to get a sense of what the space is there.
Okay, you want to take that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think originally we were envisioning that it would need a curb to hold it because we knew it was going to be depressed. And then as the detail evolved, we may not need the curb at the backside. However, I'll point out that that's also the garage, the edge of the garage below for the structure, the garage that's below grade. So we'll have a narrow window, so to speak, within which to develop this bioswale. It may be just 2.5 feet wide, or it's going to be a narrow bioswale. And that's our hopefulness, and that's what we're trying to achieve here, is a place where water from this, and I'll note it's just a private way, it's not a public way, but we're trying to do what we can to capture some of that stormwater. So doing the best we can within the space we have.
So it's directly on the face of I guess the subsurface face of the garage.
Yes.
On the left-hand side.
I need to note for the record that Tim Talon has joined us. And Tim, we're wrapping up comments on the landscape for this project. And we are taking the agenda out of order a little bit, so we'll fill you in as we go along. Thank you. Sorry, Andrew.
I love the idea of the bioswale. I love the idea of the bioswale. I love bioswales. I think that's great. We should put them everywhere. Right on that building seems really questionable, and just the width of it seems, again, also very questionable. I think it's shown right now as, I guess, single stem birch could maybe get in the 2.5 foot hole, but not by much. So I would really ask that detail to be thought through in concert with the architectural. because I don't understand that. That one seems like a real challenge. I really appreciate the wider streetscape on White Street. I used to walk down that street all the time. This would be a major improvement. I think before going to the next step, coordinating with Dr. McKilly in terms of street tree selection would be great. I really like the Nisses too. It's hard to find them at that 3 and 3.5 inch caliper, and to find 4 would be challenging too. I imagine that she would probably want a greater level of street tree diversity along that run. And she's a great source of feedback in terms of what the city needs in its tree canopy.
Who's that again?
Moving to the green pillars in the back. I just really question the green pillars. The Quercus, the 3, yeah, they seem to be actively working against circulation patterns in order to get out of the building or to move around the building. I mean, one's sort of centered on the doors right there, and those are narrow passages. And honestly, kind of everything that's happening in that gravel strip seems relatively questionable in the circulation zone.
Peter, can you clarify that those aren't actually doors exiting the building? I may have misunderstood, but I didn't think there were any doors back there.
No,
those are internal doors within the footprint of the building.
Like their closet.
So the gravel is just more of a maintenance.
Okay.
Let's not try to create a planted zone here that needs regular maintenance, but more of a, if someone had to get around to do something for maintenance, a maintenance person could more easily get around and do it. But there's no path for anyone to use actively.
So what is the width there? Because it's looking like it's about 3 feet wide, and we've got a tree in it.
Yeah, it varies. It's more than 3 feet wide where the trees are planted, because maybe it's hard to see, but the building does jog. So those trees are located where there's slightly wider zones.
But if I'm walking down, let's say the path that's right above the stairs, that looks about 3 feet wide, and I'm landing on a tree.
That's 5 feet offset from the property line. So we have a fence and then roughly.
You know, I'm going to question that, because the labeling on the amenity zone is 5'6", and the amenity zone and that path are not the same width on this plan.
Peter, can you pull up a the ground floor plan on our diagram? Because we changed some things in the back there.
Yeah, right, 3 foot. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so right now I have a 3-foot path that is leading me to a tree that is centered, and that doesn't make sense. And if I somehow shimmied around that first tree, I hit the next one, shimmy around it, hit the next one, and it just, I would ask that sort of be thought through a little bit more. Similarly, if we're going to do the path down the side, let's just be honest about what it is, which is it's a gravel path that needs to get you to the larger and more robust planting area that's in the back.
Good point. Thank you.
Yeah, I question the pairs of shrubs. I just think they're going to be really hard to keep happy and looking good. They feel sporadic. So I don't know if they were put in to meet a baseline requirement, but I just feel like.
Do you mean the Aruncus? I was actually doing a little guerrilla plant bombing within the gravel. So they're just goat's beard, a perennial that hopefully wouldn't be too much of an impact, create too much of an impasse within the gravel. I know they can get big, but I thought it would be actually kind of like a little, instead of weeds growing there, something that's native that can tolerate some shade. But they're not needed for any reason, except that I thought it'd be nicer than just all gravel, where it's hard. We don't want to plant shrubs back here to conceal, or allow for people to kind of hide. But so that was the thinking, that just some perennials that might.
Is the bike area open or closed? That's also another question I had. Like, could you use some
bike
of the
area?
Yeah.
Gated on the front. It's gated on the front.
So it's gated on the front, and then but it's open to the air on the left.
Yes.
And
it could be gated if it had to be.
So you have to go through a gate to get into the bike area or to that path, right?
Correct.
Could you go through into the bike area and have that whole sidescape planted and then go to the gravel? Like,
This is all over the building. The building's over it, so it's in the shadow. Okay.
so the area to the left of the bike area, that's sort of a duplicate path of what's happening in the bike area. Both
Oh, I see.
require you to get in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our egress path that is doubling up as the bike maneuvering aisle to the sidewalk.
Yeah, I believe what you're thinking is, could we turn this more into a landscape strip and then have this walkway be used for access and access for the neighbor?
Yeah, I
And
think
that-
either plant it or don't plant it, right? I just feel like the one or two offs are gonna look random and potentially like weeds, which will grow back there as well. So I feel like I am longing for planted areas be intentional and well done, and then gravel areas be clean. If trees can fit, great, but that's just my sense as far as aesthetically speaking, what's gonna read.
Yeah, it's easy enough to remove those. Yeah, no problem.
We'll
If
rethink this.
if it's the will of the commission right now, we are sort of significantly over time for this project. And what I'm hearing is we need, there are a number of suggestions that have been made for the applicant team to work on and then come back. I would like to ask if you are willing to vote on a facade option at this point, or do you want to continue and have the group come back? All right, I am thinking by hearing nothing, I need a motion for a continuance of this project to the next meeting.
Okay, so moved.
Seconded.
All right. I have a motion by Deborah, seconded by Andrew. Roll call vote. Andrew Auerbach,
Yes.
Deborah Fennick,
Yes.
Tim Hood,
Yes.
and Sherry Rowan,
Yes.
and Tim Talon.
I'll abstain since I wasn't here for the discussion.
All right, thank you for that. I will say that with an affidavit of listening to the recording, you will be able to comment and vote at the next meeting on this project. So,
Madam Chair, when's the next meeting?
Andrew G., can you give us a date on that, please?
Yes, the next meeting is November 22nd, week of Thanksgiving.
Wow.
Fantastic. And, okay, and is there, I'm sorry, so there was no vote on the facade choice, so if we rolled with option 2 going forward, you don't want us to present all 3 again, I assume.
I think there were a lot of comments, and so I would sort of take those into account based on the discussion. And I think, yes, you need to revise and potentially re-present the 3 options.
Okay,
Taking into account the comment.
got it. Just checking. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. As I had mentioned at the beginning, we are taking projects out of order. So the next project we will hear is 8 Medford Street. So while Andrew G unmutes that, This is the first time this will be heard, and this is another MR4 building.
If you are presenting for this project, could you please use the raise hand feature?
Good evening, Andrew. It's Ann Vigorito. I am the attorney on this project. The team is Tanya Carrier from Calsa Design. Also, we do have Nelson Oliveira. He's from the Nelson Group. And we have Erin Finch from Verdant. So if they could be all unmuted, but of course, everyone will stay muted unless they're speaking. So that being said, I'm Ann Vigorito, 424 Broadway, Somerville, Massachusetts. I'm here on behalf of 8 Medford Street, the Nelson Group. This is a project with 18 residential units. And at this time, I'm going to stop talking and hand it off to Tanya. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ann. Yes, my name is Tanya Carrier. I'm the architect from Calsa Design. I just tried to share my screen. I just want to confirm it worked. Yes, okay, good. You never know with multiple screens. So yes, thank you for having us. This is our first presentation, so I'll review the program, the zoning, and our 3 facade schemes. So the project team, as Ann presented. So here's our sites. We are at 8 Medford Street, and we are just on the border of Cambridge. We front on 2 streets, Medford Street, which is a pedestrian designated street, and Warren Street. And we are also adjacent to a railroad line. Our site's about just over 6,000 square feet. And just an aerial view showing the neighborhood. So we're close proximity to the shopping center. We have a tower building adjacent and residential neighborhood behind, also across from recently approved building at 1620 Medford Street. So what we are proposing is a 4-story general building. We are proposing a gross square footage of 24,464 square feet. And our first floor would be commercial space, about 2,250 square feet, along with our residential lobby and bike room. And above, we are proposing 3 levels of residential for rent apartments, 18 units in total. And 20% of those units would be affordable dwelling units. So for some of the improvements we are proposing to the site, increasing the sidewalks to 12 feet wide as required by zoning on both Medford and Warren Street. Addition of 4 street trees. Currently there are no trees around the site on the sidewalk or within the site. It's currently all paved or building. So we'd be adding some permeable area into the site as well. Addition of visitor bike parking along the streetscape, and enclosing a existing curb cut on Medford Street. We are proposing no parking as part of the project. We are just outside of the transit zone. You'll see in the map on the next sheet. Some of our building amenities that you'll see are a common roof deck with a green roof, a fully enclosed bike room with 40 long-term spaces plus the visitor spaces, enclosed package room, and a fully enclosed trash recycling room, along with Juliet balconies for the units. And we do have a mix of units. They are smaller scale units, studio, 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms, 6 studios, 9 1-bedrooms, and 3 2-bedrooms. So our existing sites, you can see it's currently paved and used as parking, along with a 3-story building situated at the corner. And here's our proposed site. Sorry, it's a different orientation. So on the left here, you have Medford Street, the pedestrian designated street. And along there, we've located our commercial space. So we have 2 doors into the commercial space along Medford. And then as you wrap around Warren, we've shown our residential lobby further up Warren, along with a package room and mail area, and a trash room which opens out to the street area. And we've done our long-term bike parking space along the railroad line side. So we have a pathway leading from Medford Street directly into the bike parking. And then from there, they can go into the building and straight up elevator or stairs to their unit. And we did try to comply with all zoning requirements, except for the special permit for parking. As you can see here on the map, we're really just outside of the green transit area on both sides here. And also the special permit for household living use in the MR4 zone. In our proposed landscape plan, I will let Verdant quickly walk you through the landscape design. Is Erin on the call? Maybe I'll walk you through the 3 facade schemes and we can go back to landscape once she's unmuted.
Sorry to interrupt, but this is Ann Vigorito. Erin has messaged me that she's muted on the other side, and she's been raising her hand.
This is Andrew Graminsky. I am working on the issue right now.
I am
All right,
unmuted now if you want to go over the landscape.
Great, go ahead, Erin.
Thank you. So Erin Hosseini Fitch, landscape architect from Verdant Landscape Architecture. So just to brief through the landscape plan, the landscape consists of several main concepts, most notably the enhancement of the public sidewalk. As Tanya started to mention, the sidewalks currently have no existing street trees or any trees nearby. We are proposing street shade trees along both Medford and Warren streets, as well as extending both sidewalks to 12-foot width, which would provide a 6-foot width accessible right of way along both of these streets. And then we're also proposing visitor bike parking within the proposed streetscape. And then within the property itself, we are proposing a layered vegetative buffer to mitigate both the impact of the development and to buffer the adjacent existing rail tracks on the south side of the site. And then next slide. And then up at the rooftop level, there'll be an extensive green roof that, in addition to the street trees below, the green roof will further mitigate the urban heat island effect. The green roof wraps around a shared roof deck for the residents and provides an amenity space to encourage social living and a sense of community within an outdoor setting. And then the next slide. And then here we have our preliminary plant list. The slide before that. So here showing the plant list, and most of the plantings that have been selected are native species, with just a few non-native just for accent plantings. And then the remaining 2 landscape slides brief through the preliminary green score and landscape site details. The landscape plan is compliant with the MR4 required green score, and I can discuss these items further if there are any questions. Otherwise, I'll hand it back to Tanya for the architecture.
Great, thank you for the overview. So here are our 3 facade schemes. Top there is option 1, which is a traditional red brick and a fiber cement panel. Option 2 is a gray brick base with lighter materials on the bays and upper floors. And option 3 is a kind of gray monochrome scheme with different textures and with a bronze highlight. So I'll show you in more detail. So option 1, we've shown, like I said, a traditional red brick, which is found throughout the neighborhood. We've also shown gridded windows to give it a more traditional feel. And at the corner, we've carried the brick up to the top floor in this scheme to accentuate the corner there. As far as the fiber cement siding, which could be a Sembrite or similar, we've wrapped that up all 3 stories versus treating the top floor differently that's shown in the other schemes. But then at the other bays, we've shown a different material on the top floor. So that's a standing seam metal siding in a kind of a charcoal gray. And a few additional views. So the top left is Medford and Warren Street corner view. And just adjacent to that is the Warren Street view as you're heading up. And on the bottom, the Medford Street view. So option 2, The ground floor would remain as masonry. We've shown a gray brick blend as well as cast stone sill detail and pilasters. And then above, we've used lighter materials on the bay and also in a kind of brighter color, which was requested at some of the neighborhood meetings. So we have an orange colored paneling on the bay. In between the windows, we have broken it up with a siding, lap siding treatment. And on this scheme, we've treated the top floor as it's a separate entity in a lighter color to kind of fade into the sky there. And so in this scheme, all of the bays would have the same treatment, except the corner would be at a taller elevation. In our third option, so this is the more monochrome scheme with different textures. So we have gray brick on the base and on the bays for floors 2 and 3. But on the top floor, we've treated that all in siding and wood texture fiber cement facade material and kind of like a driftwood coloring. And then we've chosen to use bronze accents to just enliven the gray there a bit without overpowering it. And here, so in this scheme, like I said, we did not carry the bay up on the corner in this scheme, just to give it a more seamless look on the top floor wrapping around. So that's our 3 options as an initial look, and we'd love to hear your feedback. I think that's it for the presentation.
Well, thank you for the presentation. I think all these options are really well done, and appreciate that. I have a couple comments on the site design, and then I'll a couple comments on the architectural design as well. On the site design, I'm wondering if there's a crosswalk today across from Warren Street and what the configuration of that is. I don't see a curb ramp shown on the landscape drawings.
Erin, do you have the response to
that? Partially. Currently, we're not showing a crosswalk, but a civil engineer hasn't been fully looped in, so it may be added at a later date.
Okay. I think that would just be something important to think about in consideration of the street tree placements and the whole configuration of that corner. Another question is on the Grand Junction. Well, I guess on Medford Street and the Grand Junction on the train track side. Is there an existing on-street bike lane on Medford Street? Or any future plans for that to be installed? Have you been working with the city on that at all?
I believe there are existing bike lanes, Tim, from what I can tell from the aerial photography, but I'm trying to verify that right now.
Okay.
I would say, I mean, just in general, this team should probably have a streetscape discussion with the city staff members. You know, I believe this is kind of the same team as 1620 Medford Street, but I think, you know, we meaning the city would be interested in sort of the same materiality and thinking continued from that property into this property.
Certainly, thank you, Courtney.
And that was going to be my third comment. That was perfect. Just consistency with the project that we reviewed next door on the streetscape. I remember there was an extensive discussion about the materials used there and wanting to create a common character of the street. I think one thing you've done here that we talked about next door as well is you've recessed the doors on the ground levels. They're not swinging into the walking space, the sidewalk. I really appreciate that.
Tim stole all of my landscape concepts, or comments, but since we're here anyway, I guess the only question I have is what's underneath the Quercus under the oak at the top right?
The landscape buffer.
but like actually
Yes.
physically under, like it feels like there probably should be some underplanting in there, and I'm not seeing that right now.
Yes. So the underplantings are still in progress, but we would be thinking some sort of ground cover such as ferns, native, and then would expand within that space as well.
Okay. Good answer. Yeah, I would say generally, like as a starting concept, I think it's great. I think again, all of Tim's comments, like it needs to match whatever's across the street and be coordinated with whatever streetscape improvements need to happen, especially whatever crosswalk comes across that street. But that's about it.
So I have a few questions. Oh.
Deborah, can I make a quick clarification just to answer some questions? So there are bike lanes on Medford Street, both sides, and there is a crosswalk on Warren existing.
Great.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, so comments about the architecture. Well, actually, first a question. I think if I'm looking at the first, well, any of the schemes. I think the intersection of Warren and Medford. It seems that that corner element is sticking out beyond the base of the ground floor. You know, so there's a ground floor, then there's the canopy, and then there's a tower on schemes 1 and 2, or a tower element. Does that overhang the base of the ground floor enclosure?
Yes, it does. It's a projecting bay, so it does overhang a bit here. I don't know how to zoom in, but
yeah, because I think, yeah. And so is that true of all the bay windows? They stand proud of the face below them at the ground floor.
yeah. So you can see the dash line here. So these are the bays that are projecting out.
Right. Okay. Yep. And the one at the corners, it seems like it's sticking out maybe further. But
well, yeah, the first line is the bay and the second is the canopy, which could be reduced if you're thinking of that.
oh, I see what's happening. Yeah, I think it looks, you know, it's a masonry. This building suggests, you know, what is it? Load-bearing walls. You know, it isn't a language of, you know, floating elements, and I find it really heavy on that corner. So, you know, because of that, I prefer the third alternative that you have that doesn't make it taller or anything like that. But the bays are quieter. I'm looking at the first one right now, so I have to scroll through to the third one. But it's, yeah, I find that it's just overhanging too much as a masonry element. It feels really funny to me. Often bay windows, you know, are metal, or they're, you know, light wood, you know, if in a brick wall. Here you've got, you know, sort of inverse, and it just doesn't, it just feels very illogical architecturally to me. And so I feel like that's a, you know, a real shortcoming of the schemes. Yeah, it feels backwards to me. And it just feels that, especially the number one, that corner element feels really heavy. You know, you've given it the added height and the cornice. So in terms of massing, I guess I like the third one the best. But I would encourage you to look at that, sort of think of the nature of materials and how they're applied to this, and what the logic is for that.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
That's a strong first, you know, general comment that I think. Oh, well, so the other thing is this is a presentational comment. You've got a lot of the context in white, ghosted in white, and it's really, so this stands as an object on, you know, in this perspective. Well, I'm looking, yeah, in all of these perspectives, and I feel like it would be very helpful to us to have more detail of those adjacent buildings, you know, to look at it in context, because that's so important. Right now it's standing as an object, which I don't think is the intent of what you're doing here. So I would encourage you to show more of the context immediate, especially, the buildings to either side.
Yeah. So the only building really adjacent to us is behind on Warren. This is a large parking lot in between, but we will definitely develop, more detailed renderings for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to tell how far they are because there's no scale to them. That, whatever, color, texture, all that. Okay, those are my comments.
I think that's a really interesting comment about materiality, Deborah. When I looked at the three options, I felt drawn to the first option, first or the second, with the taller volume on the corner, but found something disconcerting about it. And I think you put your finger on it. It's the materiality. It would be very interesting to explore switching that silver metal panel and the brick, using the metal on the projecting bay and having the wall behind be brick, which would be kind of coplanar with the brick at the ground floor as well. It would kind of be a brick plane and the metal protruding from that. I think there would be a real logic to that. I do like the taller volume kind of holding the corner there, especially because it is above an entry as well. And then the bays which step down from that down the street. I also struggle with understanding context. I think this is part of an evolving streetscape along Medford Street here. There's this building, there's the building that we reviewed and approved next door to this, which has a distinct materiality. There is a significant historic brick building across the street there. We have, yeah, exactly, the metal panel clad cold storage building, and others along that street. There's a couple other residential buildings that have been built in Medford as well, which I think are predominantly brick. But it would be really helpful to understand how this sits in relation to this evolving streetscape around it, to be able, because I think there's merit in the three different material palettes that you put together, and one could, but it's just very difficult to evaluate on its own.
I would probably say that I was also partial to the schemes that had the stronger corner, particularly because I think it seems to be a acute angle there. Looking at the first floor is recessed back, so I'm not sure if maybe the line of that corner wants to come down straight and hit the ground, because it does kind of eat away at the strength of that mass, but that would also kind of impact the scheme at the ground. Just so just in terms of experiencing that corner, it's kind of eaten away by the ground floor. I think at the tops of the bays, I was more partial to what was shown in the second scheme. The first scheme showed, I guess, a different material on tops of those with the cornice that was separating them. It seemed to be a little bit more calmer and simpler in the second scheme, and having that top band just run across. And then as far as materials, I really liked the third scheme. It was interesting juxtaposition of what you were using, but it didn't seem to be as calm as the other schemes. It was a little bit busier, which is probably why I would probably lean more towards the first or the second scheme.
Yeah, I think whatever brick color you use, whether it's brick or reddish tone, whether it's a panel or a brick, it's going to be seen in relation to the brick building across the street from it, the historic brick building. So one approach would be to find a complementary color and just find a different way of using brick or panel that is more modern and in keeping with the overall architecture of the building.
So I'm hearing that we're split and torn on the facade option. Did I miss that? Do we want to take a vote on the facade option, at least to give Tanya something to move forward with? Or do we want to revisit?
I would say, just to Tim's comment, I hear what you're saying about the top story. For me, though, option 2, I think there's too many materials, especially for a small building like this. I advocate for a more restrained palette, whether it's option 1, 3 materials, option 3, maybe even paring that down to 3 materials.
Yeah, I would probably agree if the palette can be looked at again and maybe reduced a bit. I can understand Tim's comment.
So are we pushing them to 1 or to 2?
I feel like option 1 and 2 could come back as one option that addresses the comments about materiality. I mean, they're very similar in form and massing.
Mm-hmm.
It would be helpful, I think, to see option 3 come back as well, along with more information about the surrounding context, so we can talk about that.
So then we're giving guidance, but we're not voting on a facade.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. All right. That sounds good. So it's we'll expect to see 2 options at the next meeting. And I will entertain a motion to continue and ask the team to come back.
Do we want to do 3 of them? I mean, I'm not convinced yet that the third one isn't the better one. So I need more convincing, because I feel like it's, its logic is not really successful yet, and we need to see more context. So maybe it's all 3.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood. I was going on the merge in options 1 and 2 into one scheme, but all right. So then three schemes at the next meeting. So motion to continue 8 Medford Street to our next meeting.
So motioned.
So seconded?
Motion by Andrew, seconded by Sherry. Roll call vote. Tim Hood.
Yes.
Tim Talon.
Yes.
Deborah Fennick.
Yes.
Andrew Abba.
Yes.
And Sherry. Rowan. Sorry,
Yes.
use everybody's last name. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, team. We will see you at the next meeting, which Andrew G informed us is November 22nd.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
All right, then our last project for this evening is 120 Middlesex Ave.
I'd like to recuse myself from this.
All right, Andrew Abba is so recused. Thank you, Andrew. This is a high-rise district, so we have to consider both the massing option and the facade option. as opposed to the MR4. So Andrew G, can you have the team on mute?
Yep, working on it at the moment.
Okay, everybody hear me okay? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Let me just pull up the presentation. Yeah.
Sarah, you'll let me know when we're ready to begin, please.
Is everybody able to see my screen?
All right, then I think we are ready to begin. If everybody's unmuted, I still see a hand raised. Andrew, are we good?
Yep, just about.
Okay, thank you.
All set.
Sarah, am
Okay.
I audible?
I'm sorry?
Sarah, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Great. So thank you very much for having us. We really appreciate it. My name is Mark Johnson. I'm Managing Director of Development for Divco West, and we're here tonight to present to you the proposed building design options for a new commercial lab building at 120 Middlesex. And with that, I'll turn it over to Nicole Labossiere of Divco West.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Labossiere, and I'm Director of Development at Divco West. I'm joined by Anthony Galluccio and Darren Baird from our legal team, Sean Sanger, landscape architect from Copley Wolf, and Matt Pierce, project architect with Perkins & Will. I'd like to start by providing some background on permitting efforts to date. The project received master plan special permit approval in April of 2021 under previous owner. Prior to that approval, the project was also granted a civic space hardship variance in November of 2020 and entered into a development covenant, which included making a payment for civic space in the area. Upon purchasing the property from the previous owner in 2022, Divco West committed to adhere to the original development covenant and received a new civic space variance because the previously granted one had expired. The design that was presented by the previous owner with the master plan special permit did not show all of the required mechanicals. We discussed this with city staff, and staff asked us to apply for an amendment to the master plan special permit while we apply for site plan approval. Completed our first neighborhood meeting with the Mystic Valley Task Force in September of 2022. At this meeting, we shared the design inclusive of the rooftop mechanicals that are the subject of the proposed master plan special permit amendment. The neighborhood and city showed general support for both the design and height as we continue to work with them on minor items. We're excited to be here tonight to show the UDC the proposed building along with 3 massing and 3 skin options. With that, I'll turn it over to Matt Pierce, project architect with Perkins & Will.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us this evening. Quick overview of the zoning statistics on the project. This is a 19-floor building, which includes 1 mid-level mechanical room and 2 mechanical penthouse levels. So of those 19 floors, 16 are occupied floors in the building. The zoning height is 259.5 feet to the roof structure of the last occupied floor. We have 596,000 square feet of gross floor area, in keeping with what was shown in the master plan special permit, and a maximum floor plate size of 35,000 gross square feet, in keeping with the zoning. The building is designed to accommodate lab uses on all floors of the building, which is why we have the mid-level mechanical room and the 2 penthouse levels. And there are 5.5 levels of parking below grade, and the project will be LEED Platinum certifiable. The 120 Middlesex is located between I-93 and Middlesex Avenue at the corner of Cumming Street, and the courthouse is just to the north of the site, and there are future high-rise development sites both to the south and to the west that will inhibit views of the building from I-93 in the future when those sites are developed. The site also has some great views in the meantime that it can take advantage of. There's to the south some really great views of the Mystic River, and to the south of the Boston skyline. And because of, when we think about those future building sites, adjacent to us, the corner of Middlesex and Cummings, and also the northeast corner of the building near the courthouse are really important in terms of their presence in the city. So we're going to start off by looking at some perspective views of one of the massing and envelope schemes. So this is showing our preferred massing and preferred skin strategy, and we'll go through the additional options for both massing and building envelope after these views. So this is a view looking north on Middlesex Avenue. On the left-hand side of the frame, you can see the 74 Middlesex, which is under construction, which has been obviously permitted and approved and under construction. Looking up Middlesex Avenue here, you can see in the preferred massing scheme, we've taken this gesture of acknowledging that important corner moment in Middlesex and Cummings by basically sweeping the facade around this corner of Cummings and Middlesex to create kind of a curved gesture there. So that's one kind of unified facade wrapping the corner. You also see an interesting characteristic of the building on the left-hand side, which is balconies that are both on the south end of the building and the north end of the building in most of the massing schemes. And we think those are, great amenity for tenants in the building, but they also create texture and scale and relief in this exterior of this building. This is a view looking south on Middlesex with the courthouse on the right. And you see the same feature of those balconies in the northeast corner of the building. And those really are able to take advantage of those views to the river and also kind of engage in the activity of the happening on the street down below. This is a view looking north on I-93. Again, 74 Middlesex is on the right-hand side of the image. And our building proposed is in the center. And again, you can see those balconies in this massing scheme shown in the southwest corner of the building. And then flipping around to look south on I-93, you can see the balconies on both sides of the building and the scale and relief that they create. In all these views, the penthouse forms the top of the building. Excuse me. And if you look closely, you can see the integrated louvers on the west side of the penthouse and also at the mid-level mechanical room. But the louvers are only on that west side of the building, both for the mid-level mechanical and for the rooftop penthouse mechanical rooms. So now we'll take a look at our 3 massing options. And these are all seen from views from the south and the north. And they all acknowledge the corner along Middlesex and Cummings in a different way. Good, next one. So option 1 you saw in the render perspectives that we just looked at, and this is the team's preferred option. It has a curved facade at the corner of Middlesex and Cummings, and it also has those balconies that I pointed out earlier. We've also shown a diagram of each one of these massing options with a facade strategy that is not specific to the exact composition of the facade, but kind of articulates the way different types of facades can be used to reinforce the massing concept. So you'll see here that we have clearly articulated with a different facade type at the street level, reinforcing the 1-story base of the building. The main body of the building on the lab and office floors, shown in purple here, is a different facade type. And then we articulate the top of the building with a 3rd type for that mechanical penthouse. And in this particular massing option, the skin strategy would be to have one type of, facade here in purple wrapping from Middlesex to Cummings, but then on the north side and the west side to have a different type of facade. And then you can see the view of the north end of the building in a plan diagram that accompanies that facade strategy. Massing option 2 has a notch in the corner of the building at the corner of Middlesex and Cummings. Also has those balconies in the southwest corner. And then the corresponding gesture at the northwest corner of the building is also a tall, slender element. It's sort of the inverse of the recess, the notch that's carved out at the south end of the building. That projects out at the north end. You can see the plan diagram below, which shows this kind of shift in the massing to create that vertical proportion at the corners. And again, a diagram of a facade strategy articulating how we can use different facade types to articulate this massing strategy. So we would be kind of highlighting the tall, slender volume that you see both at the corner of Middlesex and Cummings and on the north end, and also that east facade along Middlesex as one type, and then the remainder of the other three sides of the building as a different type. And then finally, the third massing option combines elements of the other two strategies in sort of a hybrid scheme. So it does have that notch at the corner of Middlesex and Cummings, but we've relocated those southern balconies from the southwest corner to the southeast corner here, so they get views up and down Middlesex Street, south down Middlesex, but also north for the balconies on the north end of the building. And again, this is the facade type strategy that would reinforce that massing. In this case, really using one type of facade on the lab and office floors to define and differentiate that vertical element at both the southeast and northeast corners of the building. Then looking at actual detailed facade options, we have taken 3 different facade approaches and applied them to the preferred massing option that we've discussed. And each of these facade options is composed of these basic types. So the 3 types that are used in different combinations for the different facade options. Type 1 has a very vertical character, combination of metal panel, vision glass, and spandrel glass, and vertical fins. Type 2 has a different proportion to it. It's a more horizontal proportion, highlighting the kind of floor-to-floor dimension and therefore a different scale in the building. And type 3 is also a vertical proportion, similar to type 1, but in this case with the projecting fins and then a combination of vision glass and spandrel glass. So facade option 1, I'm sorry, somebody speaking?
Yeah, about 10 minutes left to present, Matthew. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So this is the facade option 1, again with that vertical proportion panel on both the east side and the south side, rocking that curved corner with a combination of metal panels and projecting fins. And the metal panels project 4 inches beyond the face of the glass to achieve that shadow and depth that is described in the zoning. And you'll see that on the north side of the building and also on the west side of the building, we switched to that other type 3, which also has a vertical character, but does not have the metal panel component to it. Option 2 is that horizontal proportioned facade type. Same combination of materials as in option 1. So it's metal, glass, and spandrel glass, and vertical fins, but they are reproportioned to articulate more horizontal character to the building. And then option 3 is the spandrel glass and vision glass and vertical fins version. And that, in this case, is applied to all 4 sides of the building. And the delineation between the corners is created by the balconies that are stacked on the corners of the building. And in all of these cases, we have a penthouse that is clad in metal as well that has a texture that relates well to the texture used in the facades below. So just then to summarize that for those different facade types with a little more detail, each of those calling out the different components, the 14-inch deep metal fin, the 4-inch, the metal panels that are 4 inches proud of the glass, triple glazed vision glass and spandrel glass, and also the bay spacing, that vertical bay spacing, which is derived from subdividing the 33-foot structural grid into an 11-foot module that repeats in that vertical module for each of these options. This is now switching to the public realm, looking down at the ground floor and how that relates to the streetscape. In this plan, north is to the left, Middlesex Avenue is at the top of the plan, Cummings to the right. And you'll see that in yellow, we've indicated the building lobby. The entrance, the main entrance to the building is off of Middlesex near the corner of Cummings Street. To the left of that is a cafe space, which is open to the public and contributes to that vertical visual access space along this streetscape. And then on Cummings Street, we have a fitness component, which also has transparent storefront, which you'll see in perspectives that you'll see later. The parking ramp entry, car parking entry is on the corner of Cummings in the southwest corner of the building. Also in that area is the bike storage room, which connects to the fitness center for the ability for people to, commuters, to park in the bike room and shower and change. And then on the northeast corner of the building. Middlesex Avenue is the loading entry, separated from the parking entry for safety and many other reasons. And the north end of the building is primarily composed of the loading docks, and then we also have other support spaces such as transformer vaults, electrical rooms, and mechanical spaces on the west side. With that, I'll hand it over to Sean, our landscape architect, to talk about the landscape aspects of the streetscape.
We good? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about Middlesex. Certainly the largest facade and the largest kind of public sidewalk section of the streetscape. So we're really working within the broader vision for Middlesex Avenue. We are showing a continuous row of parking with the drop-off zone, as Matthew mentioned, closer and centered on the entry. Then we're showing a 4-foot permeable paver buffer strip, so it'll allow people to get out of their cars, open doors, and certainly not have the conflict with the green bike lane that you're seeing running parallel to that. And then I think the rest of the sidewalk is certainly for us the kind of the more active zone for the pedestrians. So what we're showing there are larger canopy trees, or the larger circles, and what we're really trying to do is create an environment for pedestrians and seating in little nodes underneath those with precast seat walls and various forms underneath there, creating a variety of seating spaces for scales and individuals. And then within that, really working with permeable pavers, we want to be able to get air and water into the root zones of these trees. We want these trees to really be able to grow and mature and kind of perform the much needed necessary kind of green canopy, if you will, to give a real sense of human scale along Middlesex Avenue. It's definitely a pretty more vehicular rated environment today. So getting those big trees and getting a really healthy environment. That zone that we're talking is about 8'6" wide. So once again, really trying to get a good green element there. And then likewise, certainly at the ground plane level, working with native plant materials and getting a really rich kind of that texture you're seeing, the color, the fragrance, all of that from those lower level native plants that would be underneath the trees along that edge to once again give us some good separation from the road as well as the bike lane, and really kind of define a greener edge for the pedestrians along the front of Middlesex. And then the other piece that you're seeing, it's probably a little hard to read, but there are those little yellow tables. Essentially the building sets back on the underside of the ground floor, 10 feet. So we've got another activity zone of seating likewise to be able to give kind of an options for, or a variety of those seating opportunities on both along sides of that concrete sidewalk. And then we're starting to play with a little bit of patterning, obviously trying to work with the interiors and the lobby space and how we might extend some of that out in the ground plane to really kind of tie together the interiors and the exterior spaces. And then likewise, as we turn the corner and come down Cummings Street, the streetscape's a little tighter, a little narrower. So we're proposing ornamental trees over here. Once again, getting something that's going to be a single stem, good sight lines underneath that, but just realizing that the scale there is a little bit tighter and kind of responding to that with a different scale tree. The canopy trees I should have mentioned are going to be in the 3.5-inch caliper kind of range. We want trees that'll be anywhere from 18 to 22 to 24 feet tall day one. Likewise on this side, they'll probably be more in the range of 15 to 18 with some those canopy flowering trees that I talked about. And then we do have our blue bike station, likewise, a little bit closer to the garage access along there. But once again, street lighting, bike racks all along Middlesex as well. I should have mentioned those as well. And then why don't we flip over to the sections? We'll just go through those quickly. We did pull these together just so you get a kind of a read on the pedestrian scale and the dimension along the streets. As I mentioned, we do have the parking lane with the 4-foot permeable paver strip, and then the 5-foot bicycle lane. Then as you're seeing in section within that green zone is our 8'6" kind of furnishing zones that'll have the seat walls, the trees, the understory, and the kind of the permeable pavers, once again, all promoting that healthy root zone. We've got a very comfortable 10-foot wide sidewalk that runs to the face of the building with an additional 10 feet running underneath kind of that building setback that I mentioned before. And then I'll just quickly run through Cummings so we can have a little more time with the building elevations. But as I mentioned, that's a little bit tighter. So our planting zone still is very generous. We're at 7'6". Once again, really trying to get good, healthy trees in that environment. And then we've got an additional 6 feet along the face of the building for the pedestrian sidewalk along there. And with that, I'll turn that back over to Matthew to just kind of walk through those perspectives.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Sean. So this is a perspective, kind of an elevation perspective on Middlesex Avenue. showing many of the features that Sean was describing. You can see this transparent storefront and building lobby and the cafe in that area, and the depth in the facade. You can see the shadows from the fins and the projecting metal panels. And there's a unique feature to this building, which you may have noticed in some of the other views, which are these diagonal braces. They're sort of a layer behind the glass in the building, and those are part of a structural system that allows the building to be, has braces at the perimeter, allows the building to be extremely efficient and reduce the amount of steel and therefore the amount of embodied carbon in the building. And it's something that we kind of build on to make a special moment at the entry to the building, using those diagonal members to frame the entry of the building. That also plays into the paving pattern that you saw in the plan that Sean was showing, and also you can see in the lobby inside of the building. That also allows us to transfer out one of the columns here to create basically a double bay entry. So usually we have our columns at 3 feet on center, and this allows us to create a clear opening of 66 feet at the entry. So, and then looking north on Middlesex Avenue, I know this was a topic that got a lot of attention in the master plan special permit review. As Sean mentioned, our storefront is set back 10 feet. That's 10 feet from the face of the building. It's 12 feet from the property line. So I know in the special permit that was 10 feet from the property line. So we increased that depth just a little bit because when we brought the columns down to the ground here to create this outdoor seating area, we feel like that's a good dimension to really get an effective seating zone protected by the building. And you can see on the right hand side some of the planters with the edge seating that Sean was talking about, as well as those canopy trees. And then finally, a view of Cumming Street in more detail. So this is the corner of the building, the entry we were just looking at. And then as you work your way down this facade, this is the fitness zone, the fitness space, which has all the windows looking out onto the street, high level of transparency, the building columns slipping out from behind the facade above to appear to touch the ground at the base, and then the parking and bike room entry on the far left here. And that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Maybe I can jump in quickly and get the landscape out of the way, if that's okay with folks. So, hey, Sean. Quick questions. On the peat walls, I saw in in that section, I see a back, which is awesome, but will there be sections? So are they just at the trees there? Is that or are those shadows of the trees?
Yeah, I can definitely do that, Sherry. Yeah, they're at the trees. They do wrap around in different configurations, though. Some of those are more kind of C-shaped, if you will, or U-shaped. Others are linear, and we're really trying to kind of create some variety of spaces under there, at the same time making sure we can accommodate the movement from the parked cars to be able to get to the pedestrian way. So we're trying to not to have it be this kind of uniform edge, but once again, you get a little variety along those spaces.
Right. So backs and arms would be awesome where the wood, just for age and mobility inclusion. And then are the planted areas at all grabbing any stormwater? Or are they?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Particularly from the, I'll call the street side coming back towards us. We'll detail the bases of those to allow water to go through. But yeah, absolutely. We're trying to capture that water and be able to utilize that for the trees.
Okay, great. And then did you have a plant list yet or not yet?
We do for the trees. We're looking at a combination of hackberry, elms, serviceberry, and some sawtooth oaks. We haven't pulled together the mix for the understories underneath the kind of in those big kind of linear green fingers yet, Sherry.
Great. Okay, I think that was it for me. Oh,
just to jump in. So, I mean, I said this to the 8 Medford Street team, but I think, it'd be worthwhile in the next time that you have your city coordination meeting, that we'd spend some time talking about the streetscape, because the city does want a level of consistency across these projects on Middlesex. So there's a lot of moves that I'm seeing that are different than what we've advised 74 Middlesex and 5 Middlesex to do. So, we need to sit down and have some coordination. And also, I think there will be some issues raised around accessibility and the accessible way within the public realm and paver use and all that sort of stuff. So we need to do some more city work on some of these design streetscape elements.
Yeah, that'd be great, Courtney. Certainly, we looked off of kind of what the design drawings were concept-wise for certainly the one that I'm going to blank the name of it that Mick Young Kim is working on block, I think, down to your right on the page. So yeah, if there are things here that are not lining up or not, we can certainly work through that. But that was certainly our intent. So that would be really helpful.
Sorry, one last.
I have a question real quick too, just sorry, because this does affect streetscape. So in the previous master plan, was the curb cut shown on Middlesex Ave? I thought that came from Cummings Street for the loading zone.
So in the
master plan change?
Yeah, in the master plan special permit, there was loading and garage were accessed off of Cummings Street. For a variety of reasons, we're proposing putting the loading zone off of Middlesex and the automobile off of Cummings. One reason is that Cummings simply isn't wide enough to accommodate the trucks. So after doing truck turning radii, we discovered that shortcoming and are proposing what you see on the screen.
All right, we will need to coordinate that with our mobility division sooner than later, because that's sort of a major change. Sorry, carry on, UDC.
Yep.
Thank you. So I just had, oh, sorry. Were you talking to me?
Just a quick question. Is there an overall public realm plan that was part of the master plan special permit, or was the master plan special permit really focused on just this building site?
No, there is a public plan, and I am trying to, it does not seem to be loading on the city website right now, but I will remedy that so that we all have access to it.
Sherry, did you have one more question, landscape related?
I did. Thank you. Two, actually. The drop off, is that curb flush to get into the entrance?
Oh, that's a really good question. As currently shown, it is not, but that's a really good question from an accessibility standpoint.
Yeah. Okay. And then just what is the green tone at the bottom of the screen? Is that between the building and your property line? Just the monolithic, olive, yeah, right there.
Yeah, at the moment we're showing that as turf, but I think we just need to get something that's going to be pretty low maintenance. It's obviously on the west side of the building. We're starting to get into a position where we're trying to be sensitive to butters. The heavier green that you're seeing is really all in response to wind study information and trying to get those to create, comfortable pedestrian environments. But that's kind of where we're showing at the moment, Sherry.
Okay. That would be tough to, I think it would be tough. It's in, I'm assuming there's going to be fence or something at that property line.
Honestly, we haven't studied it. I think there will be a fence, but
yeah. Okay. That is all. Thanks.
Thanks.
Just to continue on with that, a question, the courthouse is the next block to the left, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, because the loading zone feels like it would, I don't know, if it shifted to the bottom of the page, or, it feels like it's close to it. That's what do you call it? The continuity of the sidewalk along the courthouse, and this building would be great. And I worry about where the loading dock is, especially being as close to Middlesex Avenue as it is. That's a minor comment. I don't know how that plays with the master plan, but I do think that continuity, that courthouse has been isolated forever, and it'd be nice that it did finally connect, along Middlesex to more, more activity. Yeah, so that's the site plan. I guess a couple of comments. The commercial, the sidewalk level of the building, the building feels really heavy on top of that active sidewalk. I appreciate that you've set back the sidewalk. It almost feels like there's not enough height to that zone and or separation from the building. So if from the perspective views that you've shown, it does feel really heavy. So I feel like there's something to the proportion or the detailing maybe of, maybe especially stepping back, approaching the building. There's no separation, and it could be interesting either that the ceiling of that zone, that protected sidewalk zone, maybe it has some shape to it, and continues the facade underneath the building. Maybe it may take some space from from the floor above, which is a little bit of a problem. And I really like the in terms of facade options that we've been looking at. I think the one that you have been showing, which has it looks from a distance, it looks a little basket weavish, but I think it's quite interesting in the way that it relates to what I call the zippers on the sides. So I think it's a really interesting facade and would be pretty dynamic. And it transforming into those balconies, I think will help the success of those balconies, reading not as a tack on, but sort of like where the building gets sort of rough, like a zipper. I'm not sure about the sweep of this and the scale that it creates a much bigger facade once you have the smooth sweep. I'm a little ambivalent about that, but I do worry about how heavy the building is viewed from Middlesex and the activity that will hopefully be on Middlesex. And I wish you could get some setback on the mechanical, the penthouse level too. I'm sure everyone would love that. Okay.
We do have some setback. It's not entirely coplanar, but I definitely hear your comment.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with Deborah. I think both of your preferred options, both the massing and the architecture, are both compelling for different reasons. But just stepping back, I had a couple of questions. First, has a wind study been done for this project yet?
Nicole, do you want to take that one? Or Matt?
Yeah, I can hand it over to Matt, but yes, that has happened.
Okay, and what has that shown in terms of wind impact along the public streets?
I think Jeff knows that in most detail. Jeff, I don't know if you're able to give a little more detail on the wind study. I don't know. I don't know if Jeff has his microphone unmuted.
Jeff Kim, can you unmute?
Yeah, I don't know if I let Andrew Grabinski know that Jeff would be speaking.
Okay. Well, we can certainly follow up if
okay. Yeah.
More detail on the
Yeah, and
study
Tim,
itself.
we definitely are looking at that from certainly the site and the landscape perspective. As I mentioned, when we were talking with kind of Sherry's questions, we were looking at the site plan, that lower right-hand corner, the plant material and the treatment there is really been done in response to trying to mitigate some of those wind directions. Likewise, the sawtooth oaks, we're looking at trees that'll hold their leaves, even though they're not green anymore, they do hold them pretty late into the year. So they're not technically evergreen, but they are, and I'm forgetting the right word for that, but there's a word for those that hold on really long. So we're looking at plant species to help mitigate that where we can as well. But definitely Jeff and the team can get into much greater detail on some of the architectural elements as well. But we definitely are looking at that and taking that into consideration with the plant material selections.
Thank you for that context. I think it also would inform discussion of the transition between the base of the building and the upper stories of the building. It's basically a sheer vertical wall now. And while I appreciate the additional setback at the ground floor along Middlesex, there's potential for negative wind impacts there. Just a couple other questions. How many bike parking spaces are required and how many are provided in the ground floor room that you show?
Oh, in the room, inside the building?
Yes.
Oh, let's see. I'm gonna have to do math. I'm gonna have to count really fast here. Yeah, 32. I have to look up the exact number. I think we're in the 40 to 50 space range.
Do you have a sense of how many are required for a building?
I know we do have, I mean, we've done the calculation and this meets the requirement for the size of the building.
There's also, I believe there's more bike parking on the P1 level to enable us to meet the count.
That's correct.
I think if there's, I mean, generally speaking, if there's the flexibility to provide that at the ground level, I think in terms of usability, that would be preferable, and it also could help animate the surrounding facades. Another reason it would be helpful to kind of understand what the vision is for the parcel plan south of this as well, and the space in between that buildings. I think on your site plan,
plan stuff, yeah,
23 Cummings Street block. Just understanding, you know, what is that space between the buildings going to be in the future. And then another question, I'm wondering if you could talk a little more about the materiality of the penthouse, what's cladding the penthouse, and also the mid-level mechanical floor, your approach to that.
Okay. Sure. Maybe I'll start with the mid-level mechanical floor because that one's fairly straightforward. It basically, you can't see it. It's disguised essentially on three sides, on the south, the east, and the north. Excuse me. We do have vision glass there, and we're actually detailing that such that there's a wall built inboard of it, so it's not a shadow box, but it's actually as if it was a space. So it will essentially look like an occupied floor on those three sides, and the only side where you'll see any louvers is on the west side. So if I zoom in here, they fit in the place of the vision glass panel, so they fit into the pattern kind of neatly. It's not a continuous band. They fit into that pattern. They're integrated into that. So, and then on the penthouse level, I zoom in a little bit more here, as I think I mentioned earlier, only on the west side, similar to the mid-level mechanical. The west side is the only side that actually has louvers, and we're looking at those pretty carefully to try to get as much kind of vertical surface area to those so that they don't look like a dark cavity. You get a little bit of more continuity with the rest of the facade. They don't look like a hole in the facade. And then you can see here there's some similar pattern to the facade below that has this alternating, most similar to the type that's on the Middlesex side, with this alternating vertical texture and some projecting fins that you can see it pretty well in the light over here in the corner. And I do have back kind of with some extra materials here. I have kind of a detail of that I can share. Here we go. Yeah, so this is the detail of the penthouse. So you can see where the louvers are integrated in a similar way as punched openings as opposed to a continuous strip, just like we deal with them in the mid-level. And then this metal panel system with relief that's in the same module and the same kind of, creating the same kind of shadow lines as the facade below.
Is that metal panel type something that is used elsewhere on the building, or is it unique to the penthouse?
It's a slightly, I'll go back to these views. It's similar, but it's a little bit darker tone. So it's meant to recede a bit. So it's not as light in tone as the opaque panels in the majority of the facade. So it has a similar texture, creating shadow lines as the intent, down below as well, but it's meant to look like a clear top. So it's, it's similar, but it's a slightly darker tone, as you can see in this view.
And there's no louvers on the east and the south, what the two sides of the penthouse that we're looking at now?
Correct. It's, only on the west side. Only on the west side.
I had a question on the skin. Well, well, first of all, thank you for the presentation. All the graphics were great and very clear. The last page, when it talks about sustainability, there's a mention of that the vertical fins are utilized to reduce solar heat gain. Does that apply to all options, or is that just one of the options?
Well, so yeah, so let me go to here. You can see it pretty well. On the two types, there are basically two types that have these the vertical or vertical fin, I would say, based on the kind of verticality of the pattern. So the spacing between those, you can see the fins here. So the fins are essentially spaced at 11 feet on center on both type 3 and type 1. Type 2, just because it has a more horizontal proportion to it, that vertical fin happens less frequently in its spacing. So that's the primary difference.
Okay. I would probably I would probably lean towards your preferred options. I liked the simplicity of the curve. I do have some of the same questions when it comes to wind, and if different massing options affect wind turbulence at the base and also at the entry, if there's any particular impact to having this curve, or if there's a reduction in the other options.
Yeah, we could follow up with that. I believe the wind study we've done is on the preferred option. So we can inquire with our testing agency, as to how they think that the other ones might react, if they're similar, or if there might be some difference to that. The one thing from having done this on some other larger buildings, the balconies, certainly things like that project from the building and disrupt air turbulence are definitely helpful. And as Sean was saying, all the things we're kind of doing at the ground level between the recessed storefront, which is something carried through from the master plan special permit, but also the planting down there is really helpful in that regard as well.
Just thinking about your massing option 1, for the curve, can you talk a little more about, well, I guess first, what's the radius of it and how you're keeping the materials around the curve? Would they actually be curved, or would you segment around the corner?
That's a good question. Yeah, so that is a good question. It is.
Let me interrupt for just a quick second, if you don't mind, Matthew. Just to give the commission notice, we are at the 20-minute point of discussion.
Okay. Yeah, so to your question, this curve is segmented, and we did that in a way that the panel size of the spacing that I was describing of the kind of vertical elements, it's on 11-foot spacing. The module of the glazing, so if I go to, if I zoom in here, the vision glass areas and the metal panel areas, each of those as a vertical unit are 5.5 feet wide. So we purposefully, looked at this as, certainly more economical to do a faceted curve than an actual curved glass, but you also have to use the right radius so that it doesn't look low resolution, you might say, like, Atari graphics or something. So we looked at it pretty purposefully. I don't remember what the exact radius is. If I go back to the plan, we might be able to, actually we're showing, well, you can kind of see here this dashed line of the soffit above on the ground floor plan. I think, I want to say off my memory, we're in the 30 to 35 foot range. We looked at it pretty carefully, as I said, to make sure that we didn't end up with a really segmented, clunky curve. Because I think there's some good examples in the region, especially it was formerly the Manulife building in the Seaport. It has a curved facade and has a good way of using that vertical module to make it the right module so that the curves read smooth with flat elements, constructed with flat elements.
And there's no elements in width, no metal panel bands or anything like that that are wider than the 5'6".
Nope. No, it's very, that was something we paid a lot of attention to, because I want, we're going to do a curved corner, we just have to, we have to be really thoughtful about doing that successfully, because I've seen lots of examples of that not being done as successfully. So we paid a lot of attention to making sure we could make that happen.
There was some discussion about the scale at the base. Is there? Well, I was wondering about the scale of the ground floor in relation to the rest of the building, and then the scale of the cap or the top. Yeah. Do you know what dimension do you have to the underside of the soffit?
Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I think some of the comments with the scale of the ground floor, I would agree with. It is, the depth at the seating, and then in relation to the height, it makes it feel a little bit more squat there and a little bit darker. And then at the top, I was wondering if you could talk about the proportions there and how you came up with that height.
Sure. So yeah, it's helpful to, it's always an interesting thing looking at tall buildings, if and understanding the you can look at it from far away and you get one impression of it, but when you're really walking on the street, this is kind of more of the I think descriptive of the kind of experience you have. These two images here, the soffit in the ground floor is at 16 feet, so the floor to floor dimension from the first floor to the second floor is 20 feet. So to the bottom of the soffit, we're at 16 feet. As I said earlier, I think the from the face of the column and the face of the facade to that glass is 10 feet. Like I said, that would have been about 8 feet in what was shown in the special permit. So we increased that a bit. So we want to make sure that you feel like when you're sitting under the soffit, it feels generous enough that it feels deep enough that you feel like you're in a space, you're in a nice humanly scaled space. So we feel like that depth is a good scale, and along with kind of working in concert with all the elements of the streetscape that Sean was talking about. I think the richness of this kind of seating elements that face that. So those are the dimensions of that ground level. We also show just a little detail here. There's operable windows, which were also something that was shown in the special permit process. If I go to the top of the building, as Mark mentioned, it's not a huge setback, but we have set the penthouse back several feet on the east side and on the south side. The height of the two penthouses, our typical floor to floor for the building is 15 feet floor to floor, and there are two penthouses. The lower one is I'm going to say about 18 feet floor to floor. The second penthouse is I think 24 feet, and then beyond that we have a 10-foot rooftop mechanical screen. So that's doesn't have a roof on it. 10 feet of basically continuation of that cladding to shield the view and the noise from rooftop mounted mechanical equipment.
And the height, the 250 feet, that's to top of penthouse or top of?
No, 259.5 is to the top of, that's the zoning height of the building, to the top of the structure.
Okay, plus 52.
Yeah, so actually let me go to this diagram here. So we had, this was just a comparison with the special permit that compared 259 to the top of the occupied floor, the penthouse, top of the penthouse structure, 307.6, and then another 10 feet for that mechanical screen.
I'm going to go on record here and saying this is not an amendment to a master plan. This is a new master plan that we're probably looking at, but I will talk to my planners and coordinate on that and get back to the applicant. But as far as I'm just going to say to the UDC, we might need to pause on this to make sure, because I don't believe we're at a site plan approval point yet that would need any votes.
maybe just if I can offer a couple comments to take and stated. I do think understanding, and maybe this is what you can answer, understanding how this fits into the broader master plan special permit would be helpful. And I think especially confirming the layout of the ground floor. I think with option one, there's the two facade types. And I think there's something kind of nice about the way they nest into each other in plan, with one facade type curving around the corner on the more kind of active facing facades with the lobby, the cafe, the fitness entry. But if loading shifts to that other side and fitness flips to face the courthouse, I think that changes. That changes how I think about the diagram on the building. So that would be good to confirm. And I think also just in terms of the public realm, understanding plans for the future around the building as well. I think so. Part of the difference from the master plan special permit is the penthouse, and it is a really big penthouse, and understand the need for that given the mechanical requirements of the building. But it feels large even in proportion to the tall building volume below. And I was thinking in plan, option one feels successful as a diagram, but I think in section, these feel perhaps, it feels less engaged than the plan diagram. I wonder whether there's the possibility of, in a similar way as you're cladding the mid-level mechanical floor with the same facade as the rest of the building, or the purple portion where you have no louvers on the mechanical penthouse, actually carrying that facade up. Maybe the blue facade piece stays where it is and you have the taller mechanical, but then you carry up the facade of the purple piece. So there starts to be a staggering in section as well. And I think that's a way to create a more interesting skyline, create variation as well. For the mid-block mechanical floor, understand and appreciate the strategy there. I think there's, look at different projects around Boston that have done that with varying levels of success, as I'm sure you have. Vertex down in the Seaport, Longwood Center out in the Longwood Medical area. Detailing of that's pretty important to get it right. Not having it stand out. I'm guessing there's a different floor-to-floor height there as well. It's not the same feet as the rest of the
Yeah,
floors.
and that's one thing you notice in the different, it's a subtle thing. If you look at the different, in this more horizontal option, you can actually see, the difference there. Whereas the preferred option, it's blends in. It doesn't call attention to itself.
Yeah, that's true. And I see you're providing a balcony on that floor as well. Is that unoccupiable?
Yeah. It's not necessarily, well, you can see if it's not currently intended to be occupiable. It's just really finishing off the, that part of the mass. I felt that was an important thing to kind of complete the top of the middle, basically between the middle and the top.
So I think as this gets refined further, I don't think it would necessarily, I mean, it is a different floor than the rest of the building. It's going to have a different floor-to-floor height, carrying the same materiality through it. It's a good strategy, but it could be perhaps more intentional about another level of refinement that just creates some subtle variation on that floor, because it's going to be there anyway. It's going to be subtly different. And then, I already mentioned the bike parking on the ground floor as well. Just accommodating as much of that as it can on the ground floor. One last thing on the ground floor, I noticed there's the fire pump in the water service room facing out onto Middlesex Ave. There's not a lot of kind of active street frontage on this building. It's kind of a shame to have the service rooms of the building facing out onto Middlesex. If there was the opportunity, there's a lot of tenant mechanical space back there behind bike storage. If there were the opportunity to locate that, perhaps in one of those locations.
let us look at the water and fire pump room and see your suggestion, and also if there's any way we can activate the facade. And part of the idea of having the seating zone in front of them is to provide that activation, but we'll look at it.
It sounds like if there's not further comment that we should vote to continue. Should we take
Or
would
did we-
direction on a preferred massing or facade option be helpful and appropriate at this time?
Yeah, I think, yeah, that may be worth having a discussion about select preferred facade type and massing.
I think that's fine, as long as we know that there may be a pause before this comes back for further discussion.
Yeah, I guess my only reservation is two things that we discussed. One is whether the loading and fitness or the ground floor plan is getting reconfigured, and understanding what that is in the end, the broader public realm plan, and then also the wind study.
Yeah, that could change the massing.
But I think we could provide general guidance that I think the team's preferred direction.
Even a non-binding vote, just to get a sense of the committee, would be helpful for us. So
Yeah, preference pending the wind study and the ground floor. Yep.
Yeah, so I think we can just, I think if we're all in agreement, we can just say that. I'm not sure we need to take a vote on it.
All right. Can I have a motion to pick and approve a preferred massing and preferred facade option?
So I think we're saying that we're providing general guidance that the preference is towards the team's preferred schemes, option one for both. But we're going to hold on taking a vote pending confirmation of ground floor, broader public realm plan, and the wind study.
I would agree with that, yes.
All right, that sounds good. Then if we're not taking a vote, I think we're good for right now. And I will be in touch with the team as to when we will appear at another meeting. I do need a motion to continue this project to a future date.
I'm so moved.
A continuance moved by Deborah. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Tim. Roll call vote. Tim Hood.
Yes.
Jim Talon.
Yes.
Deborah Fennick.
Yes.
And Sherry Rowan.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, team. We will be in touch.
Thank you all very
Thank
much.
you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. See you later.
All right. Well, that is the end of our agenda for this evening. So one more vote.
Adjourn the meeting and eat dinner.
There you go. We have an adjournment motion by Deborah. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Tim, was that you? Tim
Yes.
H?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Roll call vote. Deborah.
Yes.
Tim T.
Yes.
Tim H.
Yes.
And Sherry.
Yes.
All right. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time. Have a good evening and eat something yummy.
Thanks.
Good night.
You too. Bye-bye.